Hey there, and welcome to Le Aristocrafts Makers. Today we're going to be making a Disney's Beauty and the Beast inspired card. You're going to need a Cricut and Cricut access. I will link down below in the description box with the file so that you can create this card yourself. So let's start off in our Cricut program. Select the file and select Make It. Here I'm going to remove the silhouettes because I won't be using them for this project. I had used those for a different project. For this one, what I want to do is I want to create the Enchanted Rose with the glass cloche dome that sits on top of it. So we're going to actually insert a plastic bubble dome with the 3D flower on the inside. So we're going to get rid of those pieces. So just proceed in your Cricut, make sure all your settings are proper with all the proper paper, make sure everything's sized correctly the way you want it, and then just click Make It with your Cricut. As easy as that. Here for the 3D flower, we're going to use one of the little templates that you can find on Cricut Access. I just shrunk it down to make a mini rose. Now I'm just going to show you how I put the foil over top of my paper when foiling with the Cricut. So you want to make sure that your paper is nice and secure, and then you're going to take your foil and you're going to place it over top. Make sure it's nice and taut. So you're going to tape it down with either some washi tape or the little foil tape strips that Cricut provides with the foil. What you want to do is you want to make sure it's nice and tight, make sure it's nice and flat, otherwise it's not going to be a smooth finish. So here we can see it on the Cricut. Now you're going to weed out all your pieces like you would do with any of your Cricut projects. Now that all our pieces are cut off of our Cricut and everything's weeded out, we can begin making the card. What I do is I take the base of my design, because it's already cut to the size I want the card to be when it's folded. Then I fold my cardstock and I kind of cut around that base template. I do measure sometimes, but I find this way it goes a lot quicker for me. It's just my personal preference. You can measure, I do it this way. Once your card is cut and you have the right size, now we can make an insert. All I'm going to use is, basic paper. So typical paper that you would have on your printer, just white blank paper. So what I do is I use the card to actually get the size that I want on the inside of the card. Now we have all the pieces that we need to make our card. So now we're going to put it together. So what we're going to do is we're going to place all our pieces to figure out the placement. I know I'm saying place a lot, but this is very important. You want to make sure that all your pieces sit properly, and you want to have the basic layout of your card before you start gluing down. For the little plastic dome, I made this with the We Are Memory Keepers mold press. So what I did was I sculpted out of polymer clay the shape that I wanted, and then I used the press, and then it gave me that shape. So you want to cut out the shape of the dome so that it kind of sits nicely inside your layers. To get the shape, what I did was I took my little dome and I kind of traced it with a pencil, and then I cut out on the inside of my outline that I had drawn with the pencil. That way it sits snugly around the bubble part. Once you're satisfied with the dome, you can go ahead and put it aside. Let's work on the rose. I used floral tape What we're going to do is we're going to cut off a piece and we're going to form a stem for your rose. All I did was twist it just to make our stem kind of shape. Once you're satisfied with the stem, let's make a leaf. So what I did was I used that same floral tape, I cut a smaller piece of it, and then I kind of sculpted the tape, kind of working it to form like a leaf shape. I used my scissors to kind of trim it, and then I just kind of pinched it and twisted it onto the stem that we had just made. Now let's work on the rose. So what we're going to do is we're just going to twirl this. It's very simple. All we need to do is twist it and twirl it and make it meet in the middle. Once it's all gathered into the middle, you're going to use a little small drop of hot glue just to secure it into place on the base. As soon as you're satisfied with that, what I did was I used this little tool to kind of fold the petals downwards just to give it more texture and more of an open look for the flower. So just keep working and shaping your rose until you're satisfied with the look of it. Now let's put the flower together. We're going to start off by making sure it fits properly into the dome, trimming any excess that we might have on our stem. You don't want it too long, otherwise it's not going to fit and it's not going to work. Once your stem is all trimmed and you got the desired length of flower, we're going to put it together. First off, we're going to start off by making some of those, the little green pieces on the flower that kind of meet in between the stem and the head of the flower. We're going to create those. We're going to use the same floral tape that we used before for the stem and the leaf. And all we're going to do is we're going to fold it a bit and then kind of snip it so that it comes down to a point. We don't want to make them too long, but don't worry if they're a bit too long on your flower. You can always trim them afterwards once the flower is put together. Once you have all your little pointed pieces cut out, we can now place them on the head of the flower. I used hot glue. You can use whatever kind of glue you desire. I just wanted it to set faster. That's why I used hot glue. Once you have all your little pieces onto your flower, you can go ahead and glue your stem on. For the stem, I do recommend you use hot glue, only because I feel that like a liquid glue, it's not going to be able to hold it into place. It's just going to fall and wobble all over the place. With the hot glue, at least it's sturdy. It's going to support the stem on the flower as it dries. Once your flower is all put together, now it's for your final touches. This is very important. We need to make sure our stem is the right length. We need to make sure our little points are the way we want them. Because as soon as we've glued it into that little dome, we cannot fix anything. That also means make sure if you use a hot glue gun, take away all those little spider web type things. Otherwise, your card's not going to present as nicely if you have those little spider webs inside the dome. So now I'm going to create a backdrop for my flower. I didn't want it too dark because I found you lost the flower in the background. I found this glitter adhesive sticky film that I had laying around, and I decided to use that because I found the gold color, it just accents the flower very nicely. and I found it was very Beauty and the Beast, which is exactly what I was going for. So all I did was I put the adhesive on a piece of cardstock. That way I can make the dome piece as one piece, and then as soon as all the pieces for the dome are put together, I'm just going to put it on the card afterwards. I felt that with the sticky film, I was a little too worried that I was going to place it in the wrong spot on the actual card and just ruin it. Now we're going to put our dome piece together. So what we're going to do is we are going to first place the rose. I used a little dab of hot glue on the bottom of the stem, just enough that it kind of secures it to the base. I didn't put too much because you don't want to see the hot glue come through your dome. And then I also put some at the top underneath the head of the flower, just to say so that it kisses the back of the cardstock. Now our flower's all secure, we're going to place our dome over top. The way I glued it down was I put the dome on top of the flower first, and then what I did was I went around the edges. So where the dome meets the cardstock, I just kind of put a little thin layer of hot glue so that it holds it into place. You don't want to put too much because otherwise it's going to run inside the dome and you're going to see it through onto your card. After we're done with the dome, we can now put our piece that we did the cutout of the dome on top. So we're going to place it over. We want to make sure that everything fits nicely. And then how I did it was I worked with it while it was on top. So I put a little bit of glue right at the bottom edge, and then I just kind of lift the corners and I add a bit of glue along the edge. You want to make sure that this is nice and tight and it sits neatly around the edges of your dome. It just gives a nicer and a cleaner finish. Now we can go ahead and add the little frame. It just gives a nicer little border around our centerpiece of our card. So what I did was I got some of those little foamy pieces. They're like little adhesive foam squares, and I just placed them along the edges of my frame. I wanted it to have more of a pop-up 3D effect type thing. So the little adhesive squares that I had, they weren't double-sided, so that's why I'm using a glue stick. You can get them double-sided. It'll just save you a bit of time if they've already got the adhesive on them. But as soon as you have them all onto your frame, you can go ahead and place that on your piece, and then you'll have that, set that aside. And then all we're going to do is we're going to glue our pieces onto our card, and then add our little caption, our little phrase or saying with whatever kind of stamp we have. I want to start off by putting the little frame around the statement box. That way the glue is dry when I go in with the stamp afterwards. I'm going to just set that aside. And then we're going to glue our pieces onto the backdrop of our card. All I used was a basic glue stick. It's just Elmer's glue. You can use whatever glue you have. I don't have anything too fancy right now. I use what I have. We're going to start off by gluing down the little lace border. That way it's attached to the card backdrop, and we can set that aside, because then we're going to go ahead and we're going to glue our insert inside of our actual card base. So when I glue down my insert, I only glue the one side. I'm only gonna glue the side that has, like the little statement. The reason for this is if I glue both of them, it ends up wrinkling and tearing, and you don't want that because it just doesn't present as well. Then you can go ahead and glue the little backdrop piece that we had worked on earlier. You can go ahead and glue that to the front of your card. We're going to start putting everything together now. When you glue down your backdrop, make sure that everything's nice and secure. You don't want your edges and your corners lifting up on you. Then you're going to want to find all your placement again. So place your pieces on the top of your card. Just find your placement. That way when we glue them down, we're happy and we're satisfied with where they live. Don't glue down the little box for the statement yet. We want to add our stamp in first. The other stuff you can go ahead and glue. Now let's fill in that statement box. I'm going to go ahead and use a stamp. You are more than welcome to use your calligraphy skills. I don't have any right now. I'm working on it. We're going to do this now because we want the ink to dry before we glue it down. If the ink is still wet when we go to glue it down, it's going to smudge. I've had this happen and it sucks. So make sure your stamp is nice and centered. Once it's all done, you can set it aside, let it dry. Then we'll come back to it and we're going to add some more of those little adhesive sticky squares to the back of it. You don't have to add these. I added them because I wanted it to lift off of the card a bit. Just gives a little bit more dimension and curve appeal to the card, I guess. So now we're going to put everything together. For the rose piece that we had created, we are actually going to use hot glue to hold this down just because it's kind of heavy with the little plastic dome. So use a bit of hot glue on the back of it and then place it and make sure it's nice and secure into place. And then add your statement. For this piece you could just use a glue stick if you'd like. You can use the hot glue if you want to. That's fine. Just make sure you clean off all those little spider webs. Now this next part is optional. I'm going to add a statement on the inside of the card. You can leave it blank. You can add a statement. It's your card. It's your choice. Go ahead and do what you'd like. The only reason I added a statement in mine was because I got new stamps, I got excited, and I wanted to play with them. So that's the only reason I added anything on the inside. Otherwise, I would have left it blank. Just like our last step, this one is also optional. As soon as the ink is dry on the inside of the card, we can add some embellishments, some sparkles. I'm going to use some faux pearls as well as some sticky rhinestones. I just found it added a little bit of extra something to the card. As soon as you're done adding all your embellishments, your card is complete. Now you can enjoy it and you can give it to that special somebody. I'm going to link down in the description box below with some of the items that I used as well as some similar items. I'm going to also add the Cricut file to make it a little bit easier for you guys to create this card. I hope you enjoyed this video. I enjoyed making it. This was a super fun project. I loved creating this card and I'm absolutely in love with the way it turned out. If you enjoyed this project and you liked this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. It's very appreciated. You can also find us on social medias like Facebook and Instagram. Thank you so much for watching and thank you for your support. If you guys have any other suggestions for crafts or DIYs, please leave a comment down below. Thanks for watching!